Hey, howdy, kids. Welcome to this week's episode of Conscious Embodiment, Astrology and Dreams with Dr. Michael Lennox. That's me. It's March 27th through April 2nd. We are finishing up the, the roughest month of the year and moving into the second roughest month of the year.
Great.
April's got some. Yeah. Well, listen, I will say this. Nothing was like March's, energy. Like, blah, blah, blah. And April is intense because of things like we got our next Mercury retrograde. We've got eclipse season, like the next new moon is an eclipse. So the eclipse season starts in April and carries over to May. So April's a juicy month compared to all 12, but not quite as brutal as March was. It's a little quietish this week, so I wanted to take that opportunity to answer a question that Linda sent in to us. That is a question I get asked all the time, and it's one of the most difficult things to teach in astrology about the house setup in Placidus house system, which is just geometrically complex. So let's go to the question. Linda asked, "Hi, I was listening to Conscious Embodiment and thought I'd ask a question. When you say to look at the house, let's say Aries is in, do you mean the house it's mostly in? Like Aries is the edge of house 10 and 11 in my chart, 29 degrees. So I would consider Aries in my 10th house? Is that correct?" And then she cutely says, okay, it's two questions. Then if it's like 50-50, would you look at both? For instance, 14 degrees of Capricorn is in between the 6th and 7th house. Okay. This is the hardest thing to convey about the Placidus house system in Western astrology. Placidus house system could be just translated as accurate. There are people who are teaching out there in the world something called whole house, where they just dumb it down and they don't make it accurate or complex. They just say, like, if you're a Sagittarius rising, then your whole first house is Sagittarius, your whole second house is, Capricorn, the whole third house, or Aquarius or whatever the order is. But that's not how houses work in regular natal charts. So what Linda is pointing out is you might have a house that's ruled by the sign of Aries, but the number degree might be 15 degrees of Aries. So today's Aries new moon is happening at 0 degrees of Aries. But your 5th house, I'm making that up, starts at 15 degrees of Aries. That means the new moon is in your 4th house, because that's where 0 Aries is. But your 5th house is the one that is, now I'm doing big air quotes, ruled by Aries. Are you following me, Zoe?
I believe so. So you're saying it's if it looks like it's half and half,
Yep.
something like that.
Great, that's good. Yep, half and half.
It is actually in the house that it has 0 degrees.
Right, it's half and half is great, right? So yes, half and half Aries. So yes, then if I say look to the Aries house in your chart, I'm talking about the 5th, the second part of the 50-50. Because whatever sign lands on the house cusp is said to rule that house. So in the case of this person that we're making up that has 15 degrees of Aries that begins their 5th house, their Aries house is the 5th house. So if I say, look to your Aries house, I'm saying look to your 5th house, which is the house of creative self-expression and hobbies and children.
So in her case, she's looking at her 11th house. Didn't she say it was like on the
Yeah, she's
on the
saying
line
10th
of
and
10 and
11th.
11?
So,
Okay.
yeah. But it is then accurate too, or also as well, that the new moon is happening in her 4th house. Again, I'm making this up. I'm sorry, I didn't do the 10 and 11 for Linda's clarity. I just made up 5th house. Okay. So in this general way of when I say look to the house that blank rules, that you want to be looking at the house that has that sign at the doorway, even if the lunation in question happens in the house before it.
Got it. That's clear.
It's like turning the lights on. If you think of every house in your chart like a unit in a 12-unit condo, and I say a rock is thrown into unit 4, but it's going to light up the lights in unit 5.
Mm-hmm.
So what's lit up is 5, but where was the action? In 4.
Mm-hmm.
So you do have to do a little of both these. Both C's? A little bit of both. With, I think, a bit of an emphasis on the house that's lit up, unless you're operating so masterfully with astrology that you really understand transits and know where a 0-degree new moon is hitting other aspects of your chart.
Mm.
So the reason why I thought this was a great sort of, and I hope we've done it. I mean, this is so hard to convey verbally, kids. Even when I'm teaching this in my Astrology 101, it's hard to convey, and visually it's a little bit easier. But I'm hoping I gave you a bit of a better access, kids, to figuring out what this means when I say look to the house. And so I'll just remind you that you want to look to your Gemini house right now, because Mars just wrapped up his retrograde, like just a couple of weeks ago, which means we're still sort of integrating what we learned. And the place in your consciousness that would have the most focus of what Mars did was your Gemini house. Your Aries house is huge right now because we just had a new moon in Aries, and we're going to have a second new moon in Aries in a couple of weeks. We're in the middle of 2 lunar cycles driven by Aries. It's a good time to look at your Aries house. 4, new startups, pushing forward, what you want to accomplish next. And because Jupiter and Chiron are both in Aries, there might be expansiveness and abundance or healing processes in your Aries house. Definitely want to look to your Aquarius house, because that's where Pluto is eventually going to be entering and lighting up as well. And the same thing applies with Saturn and Pisces. Your Pisces house is where lessons might be focused, and your Aquarius house is where the next 2 decades of greatest change are going to take place. So now, hopefully, every time I say look to the blank house in your chart, you'll have a slightly more accurate sense of what that means.
I'm trying to figure out where my Aries is.
Well, you know, so I can do that in an instant by looking at your chart.
What house is my Aries?
Let's find out. Ooh, that's your first house of self. You're intercepted. So your Aries and Libra stay tucked inside of your 1st and 7th house of self and relationship, which kind of means that your greatest love comes a little bit later in life.
Wow.
But I would say the promise is enormous for great and beautiful love, because you've got Venus in Aries and Jupiter in Libra in an opposition. That's a setup to learn a lot about what love is and isn't in the first, say, 40 years of your life, and to open up into a tremendous ability to contain, receive, and enjoy great personal love as you get into the later years. I never like saying that to somebody who's, 30.
Yeah, I'm like, damn, I'm going to be dating for the next 10 years.
No, I didn't say that. Did I say you're never going to have any love until you're in your 40s? I did not. Have
No.
you not had love yet?
Right, true.
You have.
Valid.
Right? I'm
Valid.
telling you the greatest expression of it
Mm.
is later? What if you meet this person in the next couple of years and it blossoms into the most extraordinary thing in 5, 6 years? Or what if you meet somebody and then there's children and, when you're, you know what I mean?
So then what does that mean right now as we're moving through,
Good
using me
question.
as an
Yeah,
example, Aries in the first house, we
Yeah.
got 2 new moons in Aries. We are fired up.
Aries says, go even if you don't feel ready. Aries
Whoa.
says, start even if courage doesn't feel present. Aries is courage personified. Remember what happens in the void of Pisces. It's a void. It's blank. It's dark. It's empty. It's connected, but it's empty. And it's one energy that says, I'll go first. And that's Aries. And because Aries dives into the void, it's Aries that springs up and is the first to say, I am. So this is your I am springtime, Zoe, because you've got an opportunity to set intentions about you powerfully, courageously, impulsively, and with fire, starting some things up. And you get 2 new moons in a row to set those intentions powerfully. So as I said, it's a fairly quiet week, considering that last week was enough to almost take us out of the solar system. I mean, I get no pleasure out of watching the world fall apart, but I do. There's something that I don't know how to put this. There's something that I enjoy about how astrology describes the process, because that helps me have less concern or fear or worry about the world gone man taking me under, because astrology just sort of allows me to be a little detached from the chaos that's generated. And last week did not disappoint with world events and, things with politics in the United States, and banking and Trump and blah, blah, blah. Quiet week today. In fact, Mercury and Jupiter are conjunct today. That's kind of the juicy energy for this Monday. So it's a fired up day to communicate and, share your ideas. This is an Aries function. Jupiter is still in Aries. So we're in these 2 lunar cycles driven by the Aries mansion. Tomorrow is the first quarter moon. So we're 1 week away from the crazy new moon that kicked us up into this fiery period that we're in. Tomorrow is the moment when the sun and the moon are at odds with each other. The archetypal meaning of the first quarter moon is intentions either thrive or fail to thrive. If I use the farming metaphor, it's like you stick the seed in the ground and a week later it cracks. Now, that crack is a crisis for the seed, right? Imagine being the seed and suddenly cracking open. You're like, holy shit, what's cracking open? It's you, it's me. The seed is cracking open, and either something will germinate out of that or the cracking open will bring the seed's death. In terms of like the week's energy, it's a stressful day. You could just think of it as a cranky day because our conscious awareness and our unconscious impulses, the sun and the moon, they're at odds with each other. Thursday's a kind of interesting, yummy, and potentially exciting day. There's a transit that shoots us into new possibilities coming out of nowhere, grounded by love. And another one that sort of breaks on, slow down, don't move too fast or impulsively. And in a combination, this could actually be a valuable moment of assessing something new that's coming up in your love experiences, courtesy of Venus, the planet of love, conjuncting Uranus in Taurus. The Great Awakener makes things happen very fast, very suddenly. And with Venus now in Taurus, love is sort of part of what's possible. In fact, I talked a lot about the intention setting that we did in the new moon a week ago. I don't remember if I said this on the podcast or not, because I have no memory of anything ever, especially if I spoke it. But I know I wrote about this in my article where I said, look, if you've got intentions you want to set In the realm of love and intimacy, this is your new moon to do it, because back then at the new moon, Venus was conjunct the North Node. That's that forward-thinking, North Star pointing energy that says this is where we're going. This is the direction the future is carrying us into. And to have a new moon in fiery, courageous Aries with Venus conjunct the North Node, this was definitely a lunar cycle to shoot your shot. Now we're a week later, a week and a half later, and on Thursday, Venus conjunct Uranus. So she's moved a little bit further, and now she's connecting with the possibility of anything can happen and probably will. And that energy is tempered by a trine between Mars and Saturn. Mars has just entered Cancer, which is the last thing I'm going to talk about in today's podcast. So the planet of action is in a more inhibited sign, energetically, Cancer, and a trine with Saturn just means slow down, there's something important going on, don't move too fast. It's a trine, which is a nice harmonious geometry. So it means that Saturn isn't going to be kicking our ass with lessons. That requires hard geometry. But what Saturn will be offering us as we move through the last days of this week is, while the heart is open for possibilities of love that are expansive and explosive and potentially exciting, Saturn will keep us sort of tempered and grounded so that we don't, it's like if you shoot your shot, you might shoot your foot off, right? This is the moment of it's okay, you haven't or won't shoot your foot off. But it's it's certainly a lovely passage for Venus in this lunar cycle, and this week reflects that. And even if you're listening to my words and thinking I'm talking about how you're going to meet your person this week, and some of you may and some of you may not, if nothing else, love is love is love is love. And when Venus moves into Taurus, we all get to open our hearts more profoundly, more courageously, more groundedly. And with Venus conjuncting Uranus, which she'll only do every couple of years, we've got a heart opening that comes from that. And so that as we move towards the end of this week, look for opportunities that reflect that you're ready to love in a juicier way. All right, let's talk about Mars in Cancer. Mars just entered Cancer after spending like 7+ months in Gemini. So he's finally in a new sign, but it's not a sign he's particularly thrilled about being in. He's not in fall or detriment in Cancer, which means he's not brutally disabled. Mars, the planet of action in any water sign, is not going to be terribly comfortable.
Right.
Cancer's all about inhibition, holding back, keeping things contained. Mars is the planet of war, action, movement, right? So he ain't comfortable here. I wish I had collected this data. I saw it maybe 15, 20 years ago, that there was some research done on domestic violence reporting and Mars placement. And
wow, interesting.
That domestic violence increases while Mars is moving through Cancer. And it makes perfect sense archetypally, because if you've got a planet that brings aggression with him and you put him in a mansion that says, when triggered, retreat. Cancer invented that. Mars can't do that when triggered, can he? So what happens in Cancer is Mars will be contained and contained and contained and contained till he explodes. So you want to watch out for your emotional responses being connected to your angry impulses while Mars is moving through Cancer. He just entered this past weekend, so we're only a couple of days in. And he's going to spend 2 months here. he's not moving as fast as he typically does. His typical passage through a sign is like 5.5 weeks.
Mhm.
So he's moving 8 weeks through Cancer because he's not moving as fast as he normally does. It's just that Mars retrogrades are slow and long. So if the planet of action is moving slow, then so are we. In fact, Mars in Cancer would say, make sure you are emotionally committed to something before you say yes.
Interesting.
Well, Cancer is the one that says, I'm confused because there's too much feeling. I have to close up the shell and process before I'm ready to come back and say what I learned. I've someone in my life who has Cancer Sun, Cancer Moon, and Cancer Mercury, and his Cancer Mercury is retrograde. I process it in an instant. This dude takes, days to process. And that's important when transiting Mars is in Cancer, that we all respect that we might have to process emotionally longer or, more something, because there's the potential to miss something that you're angry at, because this is also a sign where Mars is passive aggressive and manipulative, because he's contained. That anger, action, movement, energy contained in the waters of Cancer will do anything again to get his point across until he explodes. So watch out for your passive aggression. Watch out for indirect ways of trying to accomplish things for the next 5.5 weeks. Mars rules our sex life, so look for sex and your intimacy world to be a little bit more about romance and tenderness and gentleness. And in terms of action, if there's a hibernation or resistance sensation over the next couple of weeks, take a look at that earnestly, because what might look like you're avoiding or you're falling behind the 8 ball might just be Mars saying, it's time to rest or slow down or have some inner focus or preparation or restoration before you move out again and into some action. So I don't want to mislead anybody about this being a light week, right? It is the lightest week compared to the 3 just behind us. It is the lightest week compared to what'll happen in mid-April when we get into eclipse season and Mercury's retrograde. But we do have a little bit of a passage where we can move a little bit slower, as slow as an Aries mansion lunar cycle will allow us to move, to acclimate to the enormous change that happened last week with Pluto moving into Aquarius. I don't know how long it's going to take us to sort of acclimate to that change, because I've only lived through a couple of them and only one as an astrologer. But we do have a gentler week ahead, so I hope that is a welcome news. And just to have at it, kids, because eclipse season is going to knock us on our ass.
Did you know that Michael has a daily astro alert? If you enjoy hearing the weekly astrology, you might like knowing more about each day. When you subscribe for the daily astro alerts, you'll get an in-depth explanation of the day's astrology sent right to your email. Subscriptions are only $10 a month, or you can purchase the yearly subscription at the reduced price of $100. To subscribe, head over to michaellennox.com. All right, it's dream segment time. Every week, Dr. Michael will interpret dreams that are sent in via email or take a live caller. If you would like your dream interpreted on the podcast, you can go ahead and email us at dreams@michaellennox.com. Hopefully your dream will make it onto the show. This week we have a call-in dreamer. Hey, Ann, what you dreaming?
So a little bit of background. So I was with a man for 4 years and he had a daughter. At the time that we met, she was, I think, 5. So she had just turned 5. And there was a time where I had mentioned, hey, at some point I would really like to meet her. And he made this big gesture of like, yes, of course, I want you to meet her. But both her mother and I have decided that we wouldn't let her meet anybody until we had been dating for a long time. So that's kind of the backstory. So I was with this man for 4 years and I never met his
I was going
daughter.
to say, I know that the punchline was, and you never met her.
I never met her.
Okay.
And it was probably one of the biggest reasons why we broke up. I mean, we had a great relationships, but that in the end, it was just like, I don't understand. There was clearly some deceit going on.
Yeah, something was being withheld in a big way, obviously.
Right.
Yeah.
So essentially, I had told him I dreamt of his daughter the first time. I think we were 2 years into our relationship. And that was just very sweet. She came to my parents' house, which was really odd. This isn't the dream that I want to talk about, but I've had multiple dreams about her. Recently, the most current dream, which was about 2 weeks ago, the dream started out with my ex, and he's never the main player in this. He's always there, but he's kind of in the background.
Okay.
But the beginning of this dream, I think, is really pertinent. He shows up somewhere. I'm not familiar with the area. And he basically admits to his indiscretions. And he says, yes, I had lied to you for this many years, and I'm really sorry about it. There was a part of me that was like, thank God, I feel vindicated. Like, I understand now what this was all about. But shortly after, I'm then at a table, lunch, with him and his daughter. Having lunch, like there's like nothing going on. We're not together. We were just having this lovely conversation. I was actually teaching her astrology, which was really interesting.
I love that.
Yeah, because I'm really getting into it. I'm studying it a lot now. And
Yay.
I had like a blank natal chart on the, I guess, table. And I was showing her all the houses. And then I was showing her all the planets. And it was lovely. And at this time, let me just put her age in there. I think that so when I first met him, she was around 5.
Right.
She's about 10 now.
Right.
Like in
waking
life.
Right.
And I think she was a little bit older because I feel like when you're like 11 or 12, you can really like grasp things. So she was really understanding what I was saying. So anyways, we're having this really lovely conversation, eating lunch. And then she looks at her dad and says, why didn't I ever meet her? And he looks at her and he says, I don't have an answer for you. Her name is Tia. He says, I don't have an answer for you, but I have a lot of regret about that. Then all of a sudden, a really good friend of mine that I've known for 12 years just appears next to me. And he looks at me and he's like, why the fuck? Sorry if I could say that.
Yeah,
why are you at this lunch with this guy that treated you like total shit? And I just looked at him and I said, because I guess it's forgiveness. I don't know, but I'm like having this really awesome, I'm having this really awesome interaction with his daughter who I have always wanted to meet. And I've had multiple dreams about meeting her and us just having this really cool relationship. And I'm just curious why I always dream about her. I mean, I think I know, but it's just interesting. They feel prophetic. They feel interesting to me. We feel connected in the astral world, I guess.
Yeah.
So,
well, and on one level, like if I step into the woo-woo land for a moment, it is significantly possible that there is just an energetic connection in a way that dreams allow us to multidimensionally connect. So, like, I'm not going to dismiss that possibility that your profound dream connection with her could be something in the, energetic mystery.
Okay.
But from the perspective of your archeological, archetypal makeup, I think that this daughter represents the sort of innocence in you of what you thought love would be when you were 5, 10, 11, 12, right? It's your dream.
Yeah.
So the daughter is an aspect of you. And she's the aspect of you that's sort of saying, well, wait a minute, why didn't love work here? And so then when I think about just her then also representing a part of you that's interested in the spiritual explorations? It's almost like you're going back to your pre-pubescent or maybe early pubescent, because you inflated her age a little bit. Her in waking life age, you aged her up to where she's just at the moment where the chemicals are going to hit.
Okay.
Right? So we're talking about you at that age, or some aspect of what's the innocence that exists before we get overtaken with our hormones and move into like relating at a more adult level. We get implanted with these ideas about what love is going to be.
Okay.
So I think on some level, she's that. I love the fact that she's receptive to astrology. Then we put it out of the dating realm, and you're talking to the part of you that's excited about growing up again into a more mature relationship with life on life's terms, which I believe astrology can bring. When we contextualize our lives with recognizing that we're in a cyclical system and we're not at fault for things and energies pass through us, and you're like teaching the innocent part of you to sort of come along and join you. Talk to me about this good friend, though, because he's really the linchpin in how to understand the dream. Because you and the dream have a kind of grounded sense of this is good. In fact, you even say, I think this is forgiveness. And guess what? I think so too.
Okay.
But it's not maybe it's him you're forgiving, but it might also be men that you're forgiving. And it might also be the patriarchy that you're forgiving, or, all of the things that need forgiveness in those areas. But he's the part of you, the friend, is the part of you that's objecting, the part of you that's saying, wait, take a look at this piece, which is, this is wrong, you shouldn't be here. Talk to me about this friend. Give me a couple of adjectives that describe him in waking life.
I guess loyal. I've known him for about 12 years.
Loyal, interesting.
Loyal. I guess straight shooter. Like, why are you here? Like, this guy was a total asshole, and you're again giving yourself to him and his child without any thought of yourself, I guess.
One of the things, it's so funny that we're talking about forgiveness. I'm literally getting ready to teach a class on forgiveness.
I did see that.
Right? So forgiveness is on my mind as well. And in some ways, there is no forgiveness unless there's also resistance to forgiveness.
Yeah.
In fact, I don't trust forgiveness that comes too easily. Because people are so good at shoving the pain and suffering down into their unconscious to make and keep the peace.
Well, it's interesting that you said that, because it was funny. I was talking to my therapist about this dream because we talk about it. And I said, I just want to note that the dream says forgiveness. I'm not sure if I'm fully there yet in the waking life.
Yay! Right. So the dream is also saying, wait, don't. Why? Why would you? Both are true. Both are true. And in fact, I think that is what leads us to really true forgiveness and true integration, is we keep our eyes wide open to our desire to forgive, but our desire not to.
Right. Yeah. Because it's hard. You have to work through it. So
yes,
I'm guessing that most of my work is